As a young citizen of India, armed with technology, knowledge, and love for my nation, with a vision of transforming India into a developed nation, I'm joining Shobhit University. What about you?
Very good morning to all the participants from India and abroad to the National Webinar Series on Doubling Farmers' Income by 2022, Atmanirbhar Bharat in Agriculture. Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, Meerut, deemed to be University, Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies, and Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies extend greetings to all the participants from India and abroad who are attending today the National Webinar Series on Doubling Farmers' Income by 2022, Atmanirbhar Bharat in Agriculture. This webinar series is being hosted on every Thursday at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Today is 29th July 2021. The title is AgStack, Open Source Digital Infrastructure for the Agriculture Ecosystem. AgStack, Open Source Digital Infrastructure Ecosystems, a Linux Foundation project. On behalf of the Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, the faculty members of the university, and on my behalf, and as Professor Emeritus and the Chairman of Center of Excellence, Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies, and Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies. Welcome today guest speaker. First in order, Mr. Kapil Mehan, Strategic Advisor and Agribusiness and former Managing Director, Coromandel International Limited. Next speaker is Mr. Smear Johal, Founder, Executive Director, AgStack, a project of Linux Foundation, and CEO, Agralogics, USA. For the benefits of the participants and guest speakers, so far under this webinar series, the university has organized 37 webinars on the topic Role of Agricultural Cooperative Societies and E-Governance, Blockchain-Based Fisheries Value Chain, Self-Contained Village, a Felt Need of the Day, Spices Informatic Network Value Chain, Land and Camera, a Camouflaged Treasure Trove, Smart Hill Agriculture, a Digitalized Hill Agriculture Value System, Mara Mobile, Mara Marketing, Integrated Mariculture, Aquaponics and Precision Agriculture, MAPA Biofarms for Income Revolution, Smart Tribal Agriculture, Optimizing Value Chain, Digital Agri-Tech and Industry Perspective, Land Resources Information System in India Present and Road Ahead, Weather Decision Technologies for Increasing Farm Income, Big Data in Smart Farming, Sustainable Soil and Land Management for Climate Smart Agriculture, Understanding Market Dynamics for Increasing farm income, Role of Technologies in Mitigating Crop Risk, How to Generate Additional Profit via Simple, Attractive Approaches in Farm, Realizing the Economic Profits of Agroforestry, Actosol, Organic Humic Solutions for increasing crop yields and quality while increasing farm income and improving soil health, Closing the Nutrient Loop, Phosphorus Management in Protein Farming, Artificial Intelligence Enabled Pest Management Technology for Agriculture Crop Protection, Empowering Farmers through Extension and Knowledge Dissemination, Role of Mass Media, Poultry Monitoring, Smart Poultry Monitoring Solutions, Agrobiodiversity, Intellectual Property Laws, Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare, and Insight into the Issues for India's Agrarian Economy, Manufacture and Applications of Biochar for Increased Soil Fertility and Crop Productivity, Sustainable Integration of Livestock with Agriculture for Farm Income Increase, Role of Geographical Indications on Improving Farmers' Income, Lessons from Asia-Pacific Region, Dairy Informatics Network Value Chain, a dairy tech startup perspective for farmer income increase, Spices Informatics Network Value Chain, a turmeric startup perspective for farmers' income increase, generating sustainable on-farm income through fintech interventions, nutrition-sensitive agriculture, pathway for increasing farmers' income, artificial intelligence and data analytics to ensure farmers ensure nutrition, optimal nutrition in the soil, harvest food, and that minimize human diseases. Supply chain, a business of rural enterprises, tech enabling India's tech-starved farmers and manifold increase in productivity and income. Open insurance ecosystem for agriculture producers, risk management solutions to overcome repercussions on farmers' income, market stability, and food safety. Role of mass media for farmers' income increase, a case study from Green TV. Mr. Mani, I think Mr. Kapil's photo is not, it's showing. Mr. Kapilji, please don't switch off your video because it is online.
Yeah, can you
It is
hear me?
online, please. Thank you. Yeah, yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
The
Should I start?
37th edition was Role of Mass Media for Farmers' Income Increase, a case study from Green TV. Today is the 30th edition of this national webinar series, which will be addressed by Mr. Johal, founder and executive director at AgStack, a Linux foundation, and CEO of Agralogics USA, and Sri Kapil Mehan, strategic advisor, agribusiness, and former managing director, Coromandel International Limited, on the very important topic, AgStack, agriculture stack, open source digital infrastructure for agricultural ecosystem, a Linux foundation project. Please see the keywords: AgStack, agricultural stack, technology stack, open source, digital infrastructure, agriculture, ecosystem, and Linux foundation. And the participants, about 20 in number, on the need for digital infrastructure and the agriculture ecosystem. The need for digital infrastructure and the agriculture ecosystem. On 23rd September 2020, we had a talk on blockchain technology-based fishery value chain. On 4th November 2020, smart hill agriculture, a digitalized hill agriculture value system. On 1st December 2020, a talk on smart tribal agriculture, optimizing value chains. On 17th December 2020, on weather decision technologies for increasing farm income. On 24th December 2020, data in smart farming. On 14th January 2021, a talk on role of technologies in mitigating crop risk. On 25th February, a talk on artificial intelligence enabled pest management technology for agriculture crop protection. On 11th March 2021, talk on poultry monitoring, that is a smart poultry monitoring solutions. And 24th June, talk on artificial intelligence and data analytics to ensure optimal nutrition in soil, harvested food that minimizes human disease. On 8th July, talk on tech enable India's tech-starved farm, a manifold increase in productivity. On 15th July, talk on open insurance ecosystem for agriculture producers. And in the international webinar series on open source digital technologies towards self-reliant India, we had on 12th open technologies to provision simple and economical infrastructure. On 8th September, students using free and open source software and reaching of on 10th October 2020, open data for smart digital government. That was data governance in India. On 21st November, by Shri J. Satyanarayana, IAS retired, former Secretary to Government India. On 5th December, talk on seizing opportunities in open innovation and value creation network in the digital world for self-reliant economy by Dr. Johal Vinanchi Arachi, former principal advisor to the Director General. 12th December 2020, talk on ensuring food safety and compliance through technology. 26th December, technology investment in agriculture value chain, role of foreign direct investments by Dr. Virendra Kumar IAS, former chairman Competition Commission India and former executive director the World Bank. On 9th January 2021, rise of platform economy, revisiting value chain governance. 30th January, a digital agri startup perspective. On 20th February, a talk on unleash the power of citizens development for enterprise software development. On 13th March, a talk on building public digital platform using microservices and APIs. On 12th June, a talk on open source GovTech startups empowering growth with automation. These are all the 24 webinar series were conducted with respect to digital infrastructure and agriculture ecosystem by the Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology. Agriculture sector is the foundation of Indian economy. It employs more than 50% of India's workforce and contributes about almost 17 to 18% of its GDP. India's labor-intensive and subsistence-based agriculture sector is particularly vulnerable to the global warming and climate change. Indian farming community comprises of about 14 crore farmers, of which 85% of the farmers have small and marginal holdings. Farmer needs timely, location-specific, and personalized information for effective control on their production risk and then market their produce to identify the market opportunities. Many national level programs, Digital India 2015, Make in India 2015, Skill India 2015, Startup India 2015, Stand Up India 2015 has faced operational difficulties for its impact at farm level and farmer level, and that too at small and marginal farmers. Reforms towards digitalization of agricultural systems, doubling farmers' income by 2022, report 2018. In volume 12B, talked exclusively on digitalization of Indian agriculture system. On that subgroup, I was the chairman. And this volume 12B has recommended 7 mission mode projects. Let me read it. Digitalized agriculture, technology and innovation in agriculture, Digital India, Make in India, Skill India, and Startup India programs for transformational reforms in agriculture sector in the form of smart irrigated farming, smart rainfed farming, and smart tribal farming. Digitalized agromet advisories and agricultural risk management solutions. Digitalized agricultural resources information system and micro level planning for achieving smart village and smart farming. Digitalized value chain for about 400 agriculture commodities, digitalized access to inputs, technology, knowledge, skill, agricultural finance, credit, marketing, and agribusiness management to farmers. Digitalized integrated land and water management system, per drop more crops, and digitalized farm health management for reduction of farmers' loss. This consists of farmers' health, land health, animal health, soil health, water health, and fishery health. There are 3 Farm Acts were enacted 2020. During 2020, Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Protection and Facilitation Act, Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement and Price Assurance and Farm Services Act, and Essential Commodities Amendment Act. Atmanirbhar Bharat, it is the vision of the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, of making India a self-reliant nation rested on 5 I's: intent, inclusion, investment, infrastructure, and innovation, and based on 5 pillars: economy, quantum jump in economy, infrastructure that one represents modern India, and systems 21st century technology, and demand, whereby the strength of our demand and the supply chain should be placed to full capacity. And in the third tranche of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, Agriculture Bharat in Agriculture was announced, and it has gotten booster of about rupees 1.5 lakh crore. And Government of India has come out with an Indian digital ecosystem of agriculture. It is a first consultation paper has been published. The Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare constituted a task force for the development of centralized farmers database and creation of framework for digital ecosystem of agriculture on 7th October 2019. 7th October 2019. As a chief advisor IT of this department, I have forwarded a note on the need for creating national farmers database on 16th August 2018 to the additional secretary IT of the department and also the secretary of the department, who was also forwarded to the additional secretary IT for necessary action. In that note, let me quote some of the important points. In order to empower the farming community and also to facilitate doubling farmers' income by 2022, it is required to establish a national farmers database on core parameters for possible use by all stakeholders of agricultural value system, all stakeholders of agricultural value system, and also to provide personalized service to the farmers. Based on interaction with cross-section of stakeholders, I have prepared this note on need for creating national farmers database, which is enclosed for appropriate consideration by IT divisions of the department, that is dated 18th August 2018. I also estimated the cost to be about rupees 3,380 crore, which works out to be about rupees 260 per farmer, and for 5 years. There can be many challenges for establishing this economically important national database, master data repository. It may require to establish a special purpose vehicle, SPV, for implementation in a mission mode. Both the farmer and farm generate a lot of data from their farm management practices, but these data are not systematically captured for subsequent analysis and interpretation using information technology for strengthening about 400 agriculture commodity value chain. However, the farmer who generated data needed to agree upon data use, and sharing with other shareholders, because it is his data. He may store it in a database, but if the government wants to share with other shareholders, it needs the farmers, agreement. This is that, and I also gave the some sort of a database parameters under 26 categories. And there is in the Lok Sabha unstarred question number 2504 on 9th March 2021, the Honorable Agriculture Minister replied, the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare has constituted a task force to develop India Enterprise Architecture Digital System of Agriculture. That is called IDEA. The Unified Farmer Service Platform will be prepared based on IDEA. India Digital Ecosystem of Agriculture will lay down a framework for AgriStack. And Ministry of Electronics and Information Technologies, AgriStack, it is envisaged to provide gateway for farmers, startup, and app developers. It's a common data infrastructure of all farmers along with land record details. And it is a collection of technology-based interventions in the farming and agriculture sector that hold the potential to result in dramatic changes. This stack can enable financing for small and marginal farmers. It's dubbed as UPI for Agri-Tech. It plans to digitally encapsulate all records and history of farmers. Let me inform the participants that the views of Internet Freedom Foundation on the AgriStack, the report of the Committee on Doubling Farmers' Income, which quotes extensively the volume 12B on the chapter 7 and 8, where digital technology in agriculture have been talked about. and Niti Aayog report on National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence and the Farmer Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020 that use of electronic database for farmers meant to collect data about agriculture and use this to provide services to the farmer. It raises, five, categories. What details does it collect? What are the proposed benefits and potential issues? And how will the loss of privacy impact the farmers? Which I have, cautioned in my note to the department on 18th August 2018. Potential issues, it talks about lack of consultation with farmers' organization, algorithm-based decision making will impact farmers' rights without transparency and accountability. Incentive to harvest and process farm data for a financial gain rather than benefit of farmers. And they also quote these three, documents and also the recommendations, of that. The report of the Committee on Doubling Farmers' Income Volume 11 report discussed the role of digital technologies and digitalization in agriculture. Chapter 7 and 18 examine the potential use of big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and blockchain technology in agriculture. What are the challenges being faced? We have diverse nature of databases being built up in the agriculture and food system. Scattered databases, government, institutions, individual databases, and reports, repositories, and websites. And some of the data are unusable, poorly documented, and non-standard and non-interoperable. Government building AgriStack to give unique ID to every Indian farmer. There are a lot of newspapers, and it is a public digital platform to enable access to the farmers. This is on an article on 6 December 2017. Mr. Hemendra Mathur is a venture capital specialist. He talks about the solution lies in building AgriStack in 2017 itself. It has to have farmer stack, farm stack, and a crop stack. Three, substacks has to be there. And now there is a global project of Linux Foundation. It is an AgriStack. It is being headed by an NRI, Mr. Smith Sogal, and also facilitated by person, international expert on agricultural systems, Mr. Kapil Mehan. And this is digital software infrastructure for accelerated adoption of digital applications, data, and technologies in food and agricultural value chain. This digital infrastructure is meant for those who practice agricultural systems. And agriculture and food sector is one such large sector supporting half of the global population, which has been left out of receiving benefits of digitalization. This is largely due to each organization developing its own platform, and that data, which is not only expensive but also calls for a humongous effort to collect and manage data on billions of farmers and their individual fields. Private platforms have always fallen short of benefiting large section of farmers, mostly small ones, to use technology for income enhancement. And it is based on open source software, which accelerates innovation in digital world as use cases developers and service product providers get access to lots of free software to use in open source platform. And AgStack, this project of Linux Foundation, envisages that it allows users to reduce their spent on low ROI parts of their products and focus on their high ROI parts. It is essential to empower our farmers, and whatever the technology is available, it has to be made available to the farmers, allowing data-driven decision making for scale and inclusion. We must ensure that Indian farmers benefit from all tech developments right up front. I endorse the 4 centers of excellence: Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance and Research Studies, and Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, and Center for Informatics Development and Solutions and Application, and Center for Industry 4.0 Studies and Application of the university are focused on this core issue. Let us now turn to the address of Mr. Kapil Mehan and Mr. Smir Sogal on the very important topic, AgStack, open source digital infrastructure for the agricultural ecosystem, a Linux Foundation project. This topic will motivate and galvanize the participants watching over telecast through facebook.com, Shobhit University India, or youtube.com, Shobhit University in, for developing many joint collaborative research projects using AgStack in the form of agri-tech startups to facilitate farm as a business. More than 6,500 agri startups, one per developmental block, or even about 2.25 lakh agri startup, one per each Gram Panchayat in India. We are moving towards a digitalized platform economy in agriculture, as Digital India is the way of life as envisioned by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Let me invite our guest speaker to address the participants. Before that, let me introduce our guest speaker, Shri Kapil Mehan. Dr. Kapil Mehan is a seasoned agribusiness professional, bringing with him deep managerial and leadership expertise in the areas of business strategy, business performance and improvement, setting up new business and strategic financial investments in the manufacturing, agribusiness, agri-tech sector. He is providing advisory and expertise across varied consulting assignments with industry covering Indian and African markets, and marquee consulting partners such as EY and BCG, etc. Prior to current advisory role, during his tenure in the industry, Dr. Kapil Mehan has served in the capacity of Managing Director of Coromandel International Limited and Group CEO Agribusiness of Advantas Group, which has an employee base of 7,000 plus and revenue of more than $2 billion. He also served as Executive Director in Tata Chemicals Limited. A graduate in veterinary science and animal health, he is also an IIM Ahmedabad and Harvard Business School alumnus. Good morning, Dr. Kapil Mehanji. We welcome you to the National Webinar Series on Doubling Farmers' Income by 2022 to talk on the topic AgStack, Open Source Digital Infrastructure for Agriculture Ecosystem, the Linux Foundation project. And after you, I will invite Mr. Smir Johal from California, who is the director of the AgStack, a Linux Foundation project, to talk. Over to Dr. Kapil. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Comprehensive introduction to today's topic, as well as very kind words about me. Thank you so much. And I must also take this opportunity to extend a very hearty thanks to Shobhit University and its Chancellor, Kunwar Shekhar Vijendra ji, for enabling this exchange of thoughts, ideas by thought leaders in various aspects with respect to doubling farmers' income, which is a clarion call given by our Honorable Prime Minister a few years ago. A lot of initiatives have been already taken, but I think agriculture sector is a very, very critical sector for Indian economy, with more than 50% people dependent on agriculture directly or indirectly. Actually, some people put that number at 60% also. The entire rural economy depends primarily on agriculture for its sustenance and meeting its needs. Today's webinar is very, very important, and it becomes even more important in view of the fact that there is a growing need being felt in all the policy circles as well as in technology circles, that there is a need for building some sort of a open source infrastructure akin to a highway system, which will not only act as an agricultural digital highway, but will also act as a control system for that, so that it can direct traffic in whichever direction the innovators and farmers and other participants in the agri supply chain wish to take it to. We have two sections to this today's session, and first section will be setting the context for open source digital infrastructure for agriculture, and second part will be a more detailed overview of the plans that Linux Foundation has, which head of the project, Mr. Sumer Jor, will undertake that. Let me start by highlighting some of the strategic shifts which are taking place in the food and agriculture ecosystem, because all ecosystems are primarily driven by the consumers, and the consumers of agriculture are over 7 billion people today across the world, and out of that we have about 1.35 billion people in India. And of course, the projections are that we are headed for a 9 to 9.5 billion population by 2050. So that's the context, and that's the kind of a overall context that we must see this whole digitalization effort, which has become an important tool for efficiency improvements and productivity improvements in all ecosystems. There are a few changes which are taking place, I think, at the consumer level. From basic foods, I think we are moving to a very large extent towards nutritious and visually appealing food. Wellness narrative is gaining strong traction amongst all populations across different economic strata. Organic foods, back to nature foods, back to nature practices are again in vogue. Zero-till agriculture, conservation agriculture, sustainable agriculture, smart agriculture, these are the various words which are becoming commonplace in today's time. That leads us to how the farmers are looking at it. I think land being a limited resource, it does not expand, and it has demonstrated its ability to feed ever increasing population, and it hopes, and it will always continue, not only hopes, I have a strong belief that it will continue to feed the growing population of the future also, in whichever form, whatever shape, whatever characteristics and specifications of food that the consumers will demand. And that would mean that we will need to do more from less. Less land, more production. Less water, more production and quality production. Less of fertilizers, less of pesticides, less of seeds, less of technological interventions, less of drudgery, labor, which is associated with agriculture as a profession. So ease of doing agriculture operations, ease of doing agriculture business will again be something which will become commonplace, and that's what the digital technologies, electronics, and that is what is going to help. And it's not a choice, I believe. It's, I think, an imperative for agriculture going forward that this section of the economy also needs to get digitalized, so that we are able to reap the benefits of technology for our farmers and consumers alike. Another trend which has happened over the last few years is the focus has shifted from farm produce to farm income. And that's what brings us to this whole seminar series, and it's being done under the overall overarching title of doubling farmer income. It's not a subject only in India. I think farmer incomes are a subject of discussion across all global forums, whether it is G7, whether it is G20, whether it is agricultural research systems, whether it is IMF, whether it is World Bank, whether it is FAO. I think there is a lot more focus on farm incomes and not only food availability, because so far uh, agriculture has been driven by supplies of food, but now it is, I think, shifting gear and will become more and more demand driven. What consumers want, what consumers aspire to eat and consume will have to be produced. So there is a greater requirement for integration of demand and supply. So agriculture also, like every other economic activity, has to become demand driven and not supply driven. And that's where the role of technology will come in. And lastly, uh, the ecosystem is today having ever improving infrastructure of telecom, ever improving penetration of mobile telephony, ever improving and increasing introduction and adoption of smartphones. So I think all of this are the key enablers which are falling in place. And in case benefits of these technological improvements does not reach the farmers, uh, which unfortunately even today consists of a very large amount of poor people are related with farming, whether it is Africa, whether it is Asia, South Asia especially, and everywhere else. So generally, poverty and agriculture, I think, are generally associated with each other, and that's what I think we need to challenge. That uh, when rest of the economic system can reap the benefits of productivity improvements, so is required by the agriculture sector and the people involved in that. Let me now come to how far this journey of digital agriculture or digitalization has happened. I think last 10 to 12 years has seen a lot of digitalization efforts, which have resulted in package of practices for farmers getting digitalized. Price information on the go is being provided to farmers on through exchanges on mobile phones. Weather information is increasingly becoming possible for it to reach the farmers. Demand information in bits and pieces, I think, is also happening. Soil testing, at least in India, has happened at scale, and databases are being created of that. Financial inclusion, I think, has been attempted in a very big way in India, and I think it's happening across the mobile money, transfer of money, opening of bank accounts, Kisan credit cards, direct benefit transfers has also been done on scale. We have today 100 million farm holding farmers are getting access of direct benefit transfer from central government into directly their accounts. To me, it's a great technological achievement that our country has been able to accomplish. Agri finance, agri insurance, uh, social media is also being used. There are lots of farmer groups on social media, whether it is Facebook, whether it is WhatsApp, Instagram, and the likes. So, if we look at in an overall context, a lot has been done, but I think Professor Moni, in his opening remarks, had underlined that these are all independent, discrete, generally unorganized systems which have evolved in the last 10, 12 years. A lot of apps are there, a lot of startups are there, a lot of engineering talent is trying to solve some of the agricultural problems from IITs, from IIMs. Very bright youngsters are coming forward and trying various interventions. And we have now perhaps lots of apps, lots of portals, but there is a big but that They don't talk to each other. They don't enable each other to grow. They don't enable each other to prosper. And that's where a standardized system is required to be in place. And that's really is the context of today's uh, webinar. Now, if I come to a more framework, in terms of what are the barriers uh, in digitalization of agriculture, why is it that you know I mean over the last year or so, in my interactions with various participants in the AgTrack sector, uh, there is some sort of a uh, level of I wouldn't call it fatigue, but there is a little bit of perhaps bordering on cynicism is coming into it, that where is it going and why we are not able to take advantage of it. Now, in the whole digitalization journey across sectors, if you study, what has happened is that platforms have got scaled up, and there is a development of platform economies in every other sector of the ecosystem, whether it is automobiles, whether it is travel, whether it is cab hiring, uh, whether it is retailing, large platform ecosystems have evolved, and they have evolved at scale. And that's really what is required to be done. And some of the things that I believe, if we look at farmers as producers and general population as consumers, and then the whole ecosystem of producers will have input providers, various service providers, consumers. To reach them, you have lots of intermediaries, a lot of aggregators, a lot of processors, retailers. So there is a whole very complex web of transactions and interactions happen as the food is grown from one end and the food is consumed on the other end. And like many other sectors or businesses where production and demand go hand in hand, agriculture is one sector where production is done maybe once or twice in a year, whereas consumption is 24 by 7, around the year, 365 days. How do you bring about efficiencies in such an ecosystem where demand is daily and production is once in or twice in a year? And the net result of all this is a very, very stark economic fact that farmers get anything around 20 to 30 paisa of a rupee that a consumer pays. Where does the rest of the money go? And it is that 60, 80, 90 paisa or 70 paisa that is what is at the core of this whole digitalization and aligning demand of agricultural produce with production systems of agricultural produce. Uh, so far, our efforts have been around, uh, individualized apps, portals, providing lots of information, collecting a lot of information, but that information is not getting used, is not able to use the advanced analytics or even basic analytics to help farmers improve as we move forward and more information becomes available through these portals. And uh, what is happening is that each entity, whether it is a business organization engaged in fertilizers, whether it is in seeds, whether it is a food company, whether it is a intermediate company, whether it is various efforts which the government of India is also launched in India. What is happening is that each are not scalable because each one is trying to do everything by itself, and that's where the need for a platform scale ecosystem becomes so much evident, that you need a highway, you need an infrastructure where all these actors, whether it is on the production side of farming, whether it is on the consumption side, and in between all the transactions, interactions which happen, and exchange of commodities, exchange of value happens, and that becomes a limiting factor, and that's why limited success has been achieved by individual organizations. That is why Linux Foundation, which is at the forefront of developing open source softwares, making them available, does most of the bulwark for creating a platform, creating an infrastructure highway, providing access to models, providing access to databases, providing interactions across different databases, across different portals, across different models, as well as the researchers, the academia, the commercial world, the business world, the regulators. I think all of that need to interact seamlessly to be able to make a difference to an ecosystem like agricultural ecosystem, and that's really what is the effort that an open source digital infrastructure project like AgStack, which is being developed at a global level, through community efforts, through donor-driven donor-driven initiative. So from fragmented commercial and other transactions, information flow, etc., we are now uh, hopeful that these efforts will bear fruit. There will be more participants in this, where users, service providers, everybody, as more and more data flow happens, more and more transactions happen through the system, it gets into a virtual improvement and excellence cycle as we call it, as a cycle of virtue. So that's really what I think AgStack is trying to do, and at scale, if we have to do, and we have to develop a uh, platform strategy for a country or platform strategy for the agriculture world at global scale. But definitely for DFI, I think it has been realized also by our Government of India, and an idea document has been released for consultation, etc. But I think there is a very, very strong need for developing a platform for agri ecosystem, and that has to be at scale, which will enable every participant to dip into that system and offer solutions, whatever they feel are most appropriate for the uh, different crops, different regions, different farms, different consumers, and other different actors in this whole food and agri supply chain. So with these words, I will once again thank Professor Moni, and now hand over the floor to my colleague, uh, Mr. Sumit Johal. And back to you, Professor Moni. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those. But I have tried to, just give an overview of how the real world and the digital world can come together and benefit millions and billions of farmers, not only in India, but across the world also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kapil ji, for your very wonderful and insightful address. And we will reserve the question and answer to the end of the session. And I will, it is very, you have, given in a very, within our something like 20 minutes, you have capitalized and captured almost all essential components of for evolving a platform for agricultural ecosystem. And also we talked about, in today's terminology, we need to have a digital twin that is connecting real world with the digital world. That is a real farm, farmland with the mainland. This is that digital twin that is the producers with the consumer. Thank you very much. Please stay with us. And now let me invite, Mr. Sumit Johal. I'll introduce Mr. Sumit Johal to the audience. Mr. Manish, can you put his profile? Mr. Smir Johal is the CEO Agralogics USA and founder and executive director at AgStack, Agriculture Stack. This is a project of Linux Foundation, non-profit USA. He is a seasoned leader with over 25 years of professional experience in building and managing technology-first organizations with high performance teams across multiple industries and global geographies. Throughout his journey, Mr. Johal has led the disruptions of some of the world's largest industries in the telecom, in consumer retail, financial services, semiconductor, and renewable energy and agriculture sector at both private and publicly traded companies in the US and around the world. Mr. Johal has spent the most recent decade of his journey in leading information technology and data analytics with agri and rural centric ecosystems, agri ecosystems and rural centric ecosystems. He is the CEO of Agralogics, a computational and analytics company that provides field bespoke analytics, that provides field bespoke analytics to agribusiness clients globally, and the executive director of AgStack, that is Agriculture Stack, a project of Linux Foundation, non-profit, where he leads the development of the world's first digital infrastructure for food and agriculture. Mr. Johal grew up in an agriculture family in northern India, Punjab, and came to USA as a teenager. He earned his BS and MS in computer science and electrical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, with a minor in economics. His MS thesis work focused on real-time data analysis and computer algorithms for decision support of human and machine scheduling applications for semiconductor fabrication. Mr. Johal lives in the United States in San Francisco Bay Area with his wife and their two sons. He enjoys joining his sons in martial arts, Taekwondo, and teaching Punjabi folk dance and music Bhangra to youth in the community. He is an avid foodie and well-traveled global citizen. Mr. Johal, we invite you to today's national webinar series on doubling farmers' income by 2022, Atmanirbhar Bharat in agriculture, AgriStack open source digital infrastructure for agriculture ecosystems, the Linux Foundation today, and we are happy to host your talk. Over to Mr. Sumit Johal. Over to you. Please unmute. Please unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Moni, for that kind. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Moni, for that kind introduction and those kind words. It's my pleasure to be with you all today. Good morning to everybody in India and good evening to everybody in the US. So as Professor Moni mentioned, I actually have a background both in Indian agricultural family, but I spent most of my career in the US and most recently in the last decade, I've been leading AgStack, which is a project of the Linux Foundation. So let me begin by just expanding on Mr. Kapil Mehan's words. So thank you again, Kapil, for setting up the stage so nicely for a few words that I'd like to say. I think Kapil laid out the use case for why we need a platform type of technology to really scale the efforts of ag tech across the globe. And I think we don't have to repeat that, but I'll just out of sake of completeness, just mention again that digital technology has the potential to really provide the kind of improvement in efficiency that we have seen in other industries across the world, across the globe, over the last, let's say, 30 or 40 years of computing. So what I'd like to do is start first by talking a little bit about the history of computing and how I actually arrived at this idea that is now a project of the Linux Foundation called AgStack. So, in the 70s and 80s, in the US, starting with the US, there was this big battle between open source, which was used to be called the Free Software Foundation, which was actually started in 1983 by Richard Stallman at MIT, my alma mater, and proprietary operating systems like Windows. There was a big battle on ideology of whether computer systems really need to be proprietary or open. But even before that, when computers were really invented, and let me remind people that today, the size of a computer chip, the minimum feature size, you can fit 6,000 small features of a computer chip on one human hair. That's how small computer chip manufacturing has become today. But back in the 60s and 70s, when computer chips were actually invented at Bell Labs, one of the big things that was happening at that time was that people would make applications, engineers at IBM and Bell Labs, where these computing machines were first created, would create these applications, but the applications would have to be very big. They would have to write all this code to interact with the hard drive, to interact with the ports, to write software for the printer. And the first Apollo mission that went to the moon, there's lots of movies that have been made about it, lots of books that have been written about it. But essentially, applications were very hard, big, and brittle. They required millions of lines of code. They were often coded on punch cards and other types of devices, but every application had to interact with the entirety of the computing device and all its peripherals. In other words, there was no operating system. So in the 80s, when the operating systems came, they provided the opportunity for applications to be completely devoid of needing to write for a specific hardware. Applications could be written for the operating system, and then the operating system would then essentially manage the instructions from the application with the different peripherals. And when that happened, when the operating system revolution really happened in the 80s, that's when this open source foundation, that was just called the Free Software Foundation at the time, which later became Linux, GNU Linux, and closed proprietary operating systems, they were having this big battle. And, one can make an argument about which side won. In my opinion, there was no loser. Both efforts panned out. But what really happened was, if you look today, 30, 40 years later, right? Kapil talked about scale. If you look today at what technology powers all of the telecom infrastructure in the world, what single technology powers all the cloud infrastructure provider for all the tech companies in the world, what software is something that is completely free. And yet, from the Department of Defense in the United States to running nuclear submarines to atomic clocks, everything runs on this software. That software is Linux. And so when, I started to look into this, the problem that Kapil mentioned, where a lot of the ag tech entrepreneurs and engineers like me, who want to do good, who want to make things more efficient in the agri businesses, whether it's in India or it's in the US or African countries, they all have to build their own stack. They all have to build this big, thick expensive application, very much like applications were built before operating systems were. And what we need them to do is to benefit from this operating system type technology that is free and it's available to all. So that was the mental inspiration for me over the last 5-6 years as I've been thinking about this problem and putting together what needs to happen at the base level so that applications can be created and consumed. Not just created, but created and consumed, and they can talk to each other with the right permissive infrastructure. What needs to happen at the core level as the huge number of public data sets from weather systems to satellite systems to soil systems, all publishing data. What kind of common technology is needed and how to build it so that it's completely free and open to the world, very much like Linux did in the 70s, 80s, and so on. So that was the inspiration behind the journey. I reached out to the Linux Foundation and we came together. And to my delight, Linux Foundation is not just about Linux. So let me tell you a little bit about the Linux Foundation, and then we'll jump into some of the architectural elements and what that is going to enable for the AgTech industry. But the Linux Foundation, over the last 20 years has gone way beyond Linux. Linux was such a big success that the Linux Foundation has created an entire ecosystem where their goal is to create the greatest shared technology investment in history by enabling collaboration between sometimes extremely competitive companies. And they have done 400 such projects over the last, couple of decades. And so when I found that out, my mind was blown. I was thinking, wow, it's not just AgStack. We are not the only ones aspiring for this. They have actually done this for the automotive sector. Linux Foundation has done this for the energy sector. And we are talking global industries, not just in the US or India or China or any one particular country. And so this has now become a very tried and tested methodology and a governance structure that the Linux Foundation has created. And so AgStack is now the first and really only agriculture and food centric project of the Linux Foundation with the aspiration of creating that same type of free infrastructure, digital infrastructure that can create and enable the applications to be very light. They can be very quickly built. They can be very quickly deployed. And they can be very quickly used and consumed. When we look at Android or when we look at other types of open source operating systems, today there are millions of Android applications on mobile phone. Why? Because they have a runtime environment and the user is able to use those applications interoperably, globally. Similarly, but not exactly the same, AgStack is building this digital infrastructure, which is going to enable the same thing for food and ag. So little bit about open source, why it works, and what are the commercial elements around it which make sense to startups, venture capitalists, government stakeholders, large agribusiness companies, etc. There are all kinds of stakeholders involved in agriculture. So the first thing to understand about open source at the Linux Foundation is that it is a virtuous cycle. Mr. Kapil Mehan also mentioned this earlier on, that there is a virtuous cycle of innovation that is tried and tested now. Hundreds of projects have gone through this. And the virtuous cycle is that you start with open source, but then you build your proprietary layers, your money-making layers, or your interoperability layers around that. And so as you use that open source software as a core, because that core is being maintained and collaborated on with a larger and larger community, your per unit cost of creating software, of creating an application, where you're only creating a very thin layer around that core, becomes smaller and smaller. Think about it when you're building an Android application. Do you have to think about the GPS system to get you the latitude, longitude? Do you have to worry about the cost of the camera? Do you have to worry about, how the user is going to type in the information? Do you have to worry about the natural language interface for voice to text? None of those. You can simply write a very light application, post it and sell it, and you're done. Similarly, you can consume it very quickly and you're done. And that is what we are looking to build, maintain at the Linux Foundation. We are looking to create that inner core around which multiple stakeholders will build their own proprietary applications. But because the core is common and not owned by one country or one company, it is maintained and owned by a community. It is open source. So it doesn't belong to anybody. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to anybody. It is a open source community that it belongs to. It will forever grow with the best interest of the community in mind. And that is really why the last decade of Silicon Valley has seen an exponential rise. Over $1 trillion worth of private software companies have been acquired around this open core. They call it open core software model in different industries, not ag tech, just all the different industries. So the model of using open source as a seed around which you can wrap proprietary things and sell to your customers at a fraction of the cost, at a fraction of the time, and your customers can consume it and permissively interact with those across multiple different applications is not new. It has been done hundreds of times. It is tried and tested. It has stood the test of time. So what we're doing really is taking that, and we have just begun the journey of building this AgStack for the entire world. And we are inviting stakeholders. In fact, Government of India would be a fantastic stakeholder. We would love to have a detailed discussion around this for the Government of India to help the entire ecosystem of Indian entrepreneurship, not just AgTech companies, but larger agribusiness companies, NGOs, non-profits, regulatory agencies, food safety experts, importers and exporters. I mean, agriculture is a vast topic, as Professor Moni talked about in the beginning of the talk. So we're looking to provide that kernel, which is very malleable, very much like Linux did not know that what applications are going to run on it. It just was the operating system that enabled anybody to write any application and allowed utilities so that the application doesn't have to deal with all the other stuff that today they have to deal with in AgTech. So that's a little bit about the high level, motivation behind, AgStack and what we are trying to do. In terms of our, launch, we just launched a couple of months ago. If anybody wants to get more information about AgStack, you can go to agstack.org and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be invited to participate in technical discussions and organizational meetings, etc. We have over 24 members already. It's a membership-driven organization, both for-profit and non-profit members, both contributing members that are in the private sector, as well as free members. We call them associate members, who are from the research universities from across the world. And we hope that Shobhit University will also come in. We will collaborate in some way and create this future for India in the AgTech space. So that's a little bit about our membership structure. In terms of our actual work, we have our first deliverable coming out at the end of the year, which will be around a weather server, as well as some data servers for polygon boundary management, user registry, asset registries, and some utilities. We break them into 4 pieces: models, framework, data, and extension. So we'll be creating a small piece of each of those 4 things. On data, we will have weather data and soil data. On models, we will have some pest models and maybe some nutrition models for crops. On frameworks, we will have pub-sub mechanisms for publishing and subscribing messages so that people can build collaboration applications. And then on the extensions and toolbox, we are going to have host a tagged image data set for machine learning for agriculture. So those are the 4 components that we are building. We will have our first launch at the end of the year. We're right now in the design phase. We'll be completing design phase of some of these early components by the end of August, end of mid-September or so, and then we'll start the build and test. So that's a little bit about who we are, what we're intending to do. I'll be happy to take questions if there are any, and hand it over back to Professor Moni. I want to also, before I leave, thank Shobhit University and Professor Moni for the time, as well as all the viewers for your time to come and join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith Johal, and you have, you extended your talk on what Dr. Kapil Mehan has talked about it. He has talked about the entire, value chain of the agricultural ecosystem, and you also fit in how these technology platforms have to be developed, and how it is doing wonders in all other areas. And because agriculture is a complex system, it needs to be, informatics led discipline has to be achieved in agriculture, which is a complex system. And he also said it that, like how the applications are being developed on tried operating systems for mobile computing area, and how applications are being built and becoming thinner and thinner day by day, and how I was also attracted that how Voila system functions. They have integrated the system subcomponents, one for sending mail, one for taking GPS locations and another one is for route map. And like that, whichever is a core competent application which is successful, they have built it up for their main applications. They have not developed everything ab initio from top to bottom. These are all, it is an integrated approach, interoperable approach, which is needed for any complex systems to scale up.
Correct.
Technology wise and application wise and consumer base wise and production base wise. So here agriculture is a one system which is producer and consumer is by 2050 it is 9.5 billion, and producer is about 2 billion.
That's right.
So we are talking about a population of 2 billion versus 9.5 billion. The 2 billion also will move to 2.5 billion by 2050. So the thing is that, this is when to make it open as an agriculture system, and when to make our agriculture farming community stakeholders, all stakeholders from producer to, minus consumer, and to how to be the real stakeholders digitally enabled. And you have put it in such a manner, and then nobody else can visualize such a thing, but for you, because your profile says that you are born in an agriculture family. So agriculture system is in your DNA, and plus your technology studies and your IT background, and also you also said it that you have brought in disruptive technologies in many global companies where you have worked and functioned. And it is very important because experience you have brought it in such a manner that how Linux Foundation and how 400 plus global projects are built around the Linux core modules, and with the proprietary systems which are being built by through APIs, which are all becoming thinner and thinner. And it is he said that in Silicon Valley they were able to capture $3 trillion economy. It is very important, and this is where a person who is completely involved in both agriculture and information, digital technology, for in visualizing a platform, a digital platform based on open source technology, that is AgStack. And I will tell you, with my vast experience on 35 years working in government, I was involved in 500 districts, first district information system program way back in '87. I was instrumental in understanding, taking pilots, discussions in some of the districts like Kerala, and then presenting in the 5 district collectors conference what should be a district information system, how it should be, why it should be, and what it should be, and for who. In 5 district collectors conference, which the former Prime Minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi organized, and then operationalization in all 500 districts as a NIC district centers with the NICRET as a network backbone, brought in informatics revolution. When that time there was no the technology which was available was POX base, D base, and now at that time it is the information system was very strong. And we operated the district program on SCO Unix way back in '87 in 512 districts. And then these, built up applications, 28 sectoral, database development programs. I am alive. If the 28 sectoral database program as envisioned and documented in '87, it would have been operationalized by then 512 districts and now more than 700 districts. Today, with the technology available as big data analytics and blockchain and artificial intelligence, the technology would have helped a lot. Unfortunately, in India, we are not able to have a comprehensive information in a village. There is no comprehensive agricultural resources information system, which I have voiced for more than now 10 to 15 years. And then, and then 95, I was instrumental in bringing a national conference on informatics for sustainable agriculture development, which was, inaugurated by the then Union Minister, Dr. Balram Shekhar. And that conference gave the IT blueprint in agriculture, 15 informatics network. When e-governance word was not, heard in India. And the first and 15 informatics network, one was AgMarkNet. We were able to network in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture Corporation. Then it was called, now today, Department of Agriculture Corporation and Farmers Welfare. We were able to network 3,500 wholesale mandis out of 7,000 wholesale mandis, able to have a database on about 400 agriculture commodities and 2,000 varieties. Big data. Yeah. And 2014 ENAM project comes for, and that time it was too effective. One is, pricing efficiency, built up a system for pricing efficiency, and another one is built up a system for market efficiency.
Yeah, so may I say a few more words? May I just add a few things to your point?
No, just 1 minute. Let me complete in another 2 minutes. I'll give you a perspective so that it fits into your AgStack. One, that why now?
Yeah.
Then the 15 informatics network. That naming. It was very the AgMarkNet and AgriSnet, FishNet, Fertilizer Net, FetNet, and Plant Protection Informatics Network, and so on and so forth. And Government of India, many departments associated with this one, with NIC's coordination. We were able to put it, and during this operationalization, I felt that there is a strong rural distress, and then IT in agriculture has to be operationalized, and rural youths have to be brought in. And because of the simple reason that agriculture science curriculum doesn't talk about IT, and computer science curriculum doesn't talk about use cases in agriculture. Today, you see the situations, whether it is a quantum computing, or big data analytics, or artificial intelligence. In most of the global companies, use case is agriculture. Today, many agri startups have come up with the IT background. Understanding agriculture, which is a complex system, one has to have a proper DNA. for the agriculture startup to be successful. Otherwise, you will be dealing with only small portion. And agriculture startup, without IT background, they are failing in many areas. And this is one which I was able to visualize as an former IITian, MTech Computer Science from IIT Chennai, 76-78 batch, got into NIC, retired as its Director General in 2014. But my life is all along in district, central on agricultural rural development sector. And then I thought that I should convert this experience and expertise as a curriculum that is called Agricultural Informatics Curriculum. And when I retired, this is the first university, Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, invited me to propagate and develop agricultural informatics, program. And we were able to, establish 4 centers of excellence. This is the first university in the world to have 4 centers of excellence related to technology, propagation to rural youth in Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Studies, Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, and Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Application, that is on informatics with standards, and also Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Application for SMEs. And this is an important thing and today's your talk on AgriStack is an important thing. And I welcome our Honorable Chancellor who joined. And before I invite him, Mr. Sumer, you would like to, intervene me, kindly, proceed.
I just had one quick comment. For you, Professor Moni. I was agreeing with what you're saying, but there's just one point that I wanted to make, which is something that Mr. Kapil Mehan said in his remarks. And I want to remind people about that, because that is also the same reason why a revolution happened in the tech industry. See, what Kapil mentioned earlier on was that the consumer of food is becoming increasingly aware of health, of the visual aspect of food, of the taste of the food, not just of quantity and price. Okay? And actually, that is not just in India or US, that is a global phenomenon that has been going on and accelerating over the last, let's say, decade or so. That is extremely good news, because that was also the reason why the tech industry, generally speaking, transformed. When something is required by the demand side of the equation rather than the supply side of the equation, people like you and me and others like us, we want the supply side to flourish, for the rural youth to become more empowered. I come from a village in India. I understand rural youth. I, think that is a very important thing to happen, is the rural youth should become digitally native. But actually, the reason they will become digitally native is not because just you and I want it. The reason why I think this is such an exciting time in history, that because the consumer, the demand side of the equation, is going to demand that change, and the entire global supply chain will have to respond or risk its demise, because others who are competitive will take over. And when that change happens, let me ask you, I don't know if there's a Blockbuster Video in India, but there used to be a shop called Blockbuster Video in the US, and they used to sell video cassettes, right? And you'd go and rent video cassettes from them, and they were the first ones selling content to consumers, and they refused to change. They kept having their store. They refused to go digital. One after the other companies came and started slowly eroding their market share, and they're bankrupt. And so the same will happen to producers of food who don't go digital, because the consumer is going to demand it. And so this is an exciting time. There are tons of challenges That is why we have gotten education to overcome those challenges, isn't it? But what's exciting for the students of Shobhit University is what Kapil mentioned, which is the consumer is changing. And so the entire supply chain is going to demand computer science graduates to have agriculture background and to have food and agribusiness background, to know what aquaculture is, to know how food is produced, because today we don't. That's just all I wanted to mention.
Professor
Mr.
Moni,
Smear, yes.
I just want to add, to the discussion, and today, uh, coming back to our main topic of today's discussion on AgStack, we have no depth of databases in India, and I, discuss it in all seriousness. Uh, we have land records at one place, we have water records at another place, we have soil test data at another place, we have pest and diseases, data at some place. We have, agriculture markets database. We have agriculture prices database. We have weather information. And standalone, they are all unique and extensive and very large by themselves. But for that to become as a, as it's now a proven hypothesis, and a fact that the next wave of improvement, and it has been proven even more starkly by post-pandemic world as we have gone through over the last 18 months, that data is the new oil. Data is the new fuel, which will drive economic growth, which will drive prosperity, which will drive millions of people coming out of poverty. And agriculture is such a subject which is associated with poverty, which is associated with remoteness, which is associated with disintegrated, fragmented approach to problem solving. And I think a need for an integrated AgStack operating system, or we call it as platform. But again, we have multiple platforms working in agriculture field, but nothing at scale, which can make an impact to the society. I mean, India is a very vast country. I would just keep my comments to India only, but you go to Africa, more than twice arable land in Africa, with good access to water, very basic resource, good land, but no access to markets, no access to finances. All of that, basic elements of having a robust, uh, functioning economic system calls for that we need to integrate all these databases. I think, Professor Moni, in every talk of yours, you have been underscoring the need for integrating this interoperability. Uh, one database helping other database, but then they're not configured, they're not designed properly. So they can, one thing which digital technology does is it cleans up a lot of databases. It cleans up, in the early days we used to study garbage in, garbage out. That's how, that if you don't have data in properly configured, proper formats, accessible, the outputs, you can't expect, if the design is not good, you can't expect any optimization to deliver anything out of that. So this is just, just underscoring the need for India to have, discussions have started. I'm very happy about that. I'm also very excited that yes, things will change, but I think that needs to get accelerated. That intervention needs to get accelerated, and there is a need for this idea platform, which has been consultation paper, which has been circulated by government, and its announcement on creating an agriculture stack. uh, I think we need to ensure through various communications, etc., as well as outreach to the government and to our policymakers, academia, researchers, technology developers, that we must do it right. A good design will enable good implementation. So we must deliberate, get all inputs, get all thoughts in place so that we have an AgStack, and I, like to call it, as it's now contemporary word, that platform at scale, so that many more people, anybody who is associated in any way with agriculture and food value chain, can come in, do his stuff, contribute to it, and it will keep growing. That's all. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Kapil ji. And today, we had two speakers from the AgriStack platform. Dr. Kapil Mehan, he is a strategic advisor and agribusiness and former managing director, Coromandel International Limited, and Mr. Sumit Johal is the founder and executive director, AgStack, project and CEO Agralogics from USA. And we welcome our Honorable Chancellor, Shri Kunwar Vijendra, and he is the patron of the these two webinar series. One is on National Webinar Series on Doubling Farmers' Income by 2022, and he also comes from the agriculture family and is the third generation which runs the education institution in the country in the part of Uttar Pradesh. And he was instrumental in establishing 4 centers of excellence to promote technologies in agriculture centric and rural centric for the rural youths. And let me introduce our Honorable Chancellor, Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, to the audience. Shri Kunwar Vijendra is the co-founder and Chancellor of Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, Meerut, deemed to be university, NAC accredited, and Shobhit University, Gango, Uttar Pradesh. He is a prominent social entrepreneur based in New Delhi and carries leadership roles in many organizations. He has been nominated as the co-chairman of National Council on Education of ASSOCHAM, the oldest apex chamber of commerce in India for the year 2020-21 and 2021-22. Shri Kunwar Vijendra is a persistent advocate of initiatives for education for all, secular values, crisis management through diplomatic and peaceful ways, globalized system of learning, and harmonious coexistence. He has been instrumental in the development of a number of higher educational institutes in North India, including 2 universities, many research centers, an Ayurveda Medical College, College of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences, and a 100-bed Ayush hospital. Shri Kunwar Vijendra is instrumental in establishing 4 centers of excellence: Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies, Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Application, and Center for Industry 4.0 Studies and Application in the university to promote informatics and technology-led development in rural India. He is also planning to establish a Center for Health Informatics and Computing in the university to produce MSc and BSc level health informatics professionals. He is very actively involved with a number of social organizations. Acknowledging his contribution to the areas of education and other concerns, he has been copiously honored and awarded. Traveled widely in India and abroad to the countries like USA, UK, Germany, Australia, Russia, China, South Korea, Vietnam, Mongolia, United Arab Emirates, Mauritius, Rwanda, Uganda, and Croatia, etc., to participate in various professional and social and educational activities. Shri Kunwar Vijendra is a passionate Gandhian, avid reader, keen learner, social speaker, occasional poet, and a dreamer. We welcome our Honorable Chancellor to give his valedictory address in the National Webinar Series on Doubling Farmers' Income by 2022 and engage for a discussion with the 2 guest speakers today. Over to Shri Kunwar Vijendra.
Thank you very much, Professor Moni. Good afternoon, everybody in India. And Mr. Johal, it must be late evening over there. Thank you very much for joining us today. It is indeed a pleasure for me to join this wonderful webinar, which is not only of national importance, but it is of global importance. I congratulate Professor Moni for his persistent effort for having a series of webinars on doubling farmers' income by 2022 and inviting different stakeholders, players, those who are contributing in the life of farmers. This vision of our Honorable Prime Minister that we can double the income of our farmers, when it was declared by him, many of us were not believing him. We were thinking how it is possible. But in last 37 weeks, after listening to so many stakeholders and players, in which we had policymakers, we had bureaucrats, we had politicians, we had technocrats, we had academicians, we had practitioners, we had farmers, we had agriculturists, and we had everybody who could have come. And they discussed, deliberated their work, their conviction, their commitment. It gave us a reason to believe, yes, it is possible. Not only in India, globally it is possible that we double the income of our farmers and make their life more comfortable than what it is today. Today's topic, if I look at AgStack, open source digital infrastructure for the agriculture ecosystem, is very important indeed. And I must thank Mr. Johal, the founder and executive director of AgTech, and Dr. Kapil Mehan for joining us. 2 hours sparing for a webinar, and definitely before that, working and reading and preparing yourself for that. It means a lot for a university like Shobhit University, because we have created this platform not only for the sake of academicians, but we wish that farmers, young boys and girls, they must listen to you people. They must understand what is possible, what is happening in the world. And in the world where 33% of all food produced is wasted, and more than 9% of people in the world are hungry, we need to talk about it. We need to see that how world can be changed with the interface of digital, interface of other technologies, whatever we can do. But we have to change this current scenario. I was trying to understand that what AgStack is doing. I'm not an agriculturist. Yes, I hail from a family of farmers. We have agricultural land. We do farming even now. But I am not a student of agriculture science. And it is good that I am not a student of agriculture science, because it gives me a reason to believe in many things maybe a scientist will not believe. I believe more in miracles to happen. I believe, yes, it is possible. And this is what I saw in the presentation of Mr. Johal. I saw it was there. I do not know you are a farmer or you have an agriculture background or not, but that conviction I saw in you, that yes, it is possible, we will do it. Dr. Kapil Mehan, he is a strategic advisor, so definitely he must be having more knowledge, more concerns, and sometimes more fears also. How it is possible, how it will be done. But people like me and you, I believe, we have a better understanding and we can say, yes, it is possible if a conviction is there. And this is exactly this webinar series is all about, where we want to give this conviction, confidence, and commitment to the people, those who are listening to us. Thousands and thousands of people will be listening to this presentation of yours in coming times through different platforms. I was trying to understand what Indian government is doing in this area. We have one initiative called AgriStack. and where the government Ministry of Agriculture has signed one memorandum of understanding with Microsoft to run a pilot project for 100 villages in 6 states, where we will be looking into the possibility to have the data first and to see that how that data works. But when we talk about that data is money, Mr. Mehan said data is oil, the new fuel, we have to see that that is integrated. A very important point Mr. Kapil has mentioned, that we have data, but it is lying with multiple agencies. And a spilled oil cannot be used to run a vehicle. It has to come into one vessel. It has to come together. And this is one of the biggest challenge what the world is having. Not only India, it is globally, it is happening. In India, we can see it because it being a large country with one of the largest population and possibilities. Yes, we can see that it is with multiple agencies, and I am very sure that initiatives like Linux Foundation has taken, they will help the world to integrate this data. Because I was reading a release of Linux Foundation of May 2021, where they declared about launching of open source digital infrastructure project for agriculture to enable global cooperation among industry, government, and academia, and build a digital infrastructure for everybody. I was reading your statement also, Mr. Sumir Johal, in that media report, that the global agriculture ecosystem desperately needs a digital makeover. There is too much loss of productivity and innovation due to the absence of unusable tools and data. This is exactly what need to be addressed. Many challenges will come. The first challenge is that how to convince our youth in a country like India that agriculture is also an important subject. You can not only get employment, you can become a wonderful entrepreneur if you know what agriculture is all about. At Shobhit University, we are working in that direction. Professor Moni has taken that lead. When around 8 years back, he started talking about agriculture informatics. Still, there is a challenge. When I remember, I was talking to AICTE, which is the apex body of technical education, All India Council for Technical Education. And I said that there may be a branch of engineering, agriculture informatics. And nobody is ready to understand. They said, okay, in agriculture technology, you can have a specialization, but having a full branch in agriculture informatics is something too much. This something too much is killing too much, and this need to be addressed. And I'm really happy that not only you, Mr. Kapil, Mehan also mentioned that this thing has to bring, and we have to educate our youth, especially the rural youth. Those who are even today in this digital world are afraid of using a computer. And this thing, how it will happen? It will happen when we will have some stories to tell. We all are from India. We know that India is a country where stories are the way to communicate knowledge and wisdom. Right from our Vedas to Guru Granth Sahib, if we look at, there are so many wonderful stories, incidents, happenings, which we share and we say, okay, we are transferring the wisdom and knowledge and motivation through those stories. So at Shobhit also, we are looking for such stories. And this webinar series again gives an opportunity to all our invited guests to share their story. And today we had a wonderful story where it says it is possible. But just narrating a story or a possibility will not help much. I was happy that in your media report, there was a mention of two wonderful universities also, Purdue University and UC Davis. By the way, my son is studying there in UC Davis, and many times he say, "Papa, I will shift to agriculture." He is an engineering student, and every time I say, "Please go." But next week he will say, "No, no, I'm fine. What I'm doing." Okay, these dilemmas are there. But I have visited UC Davis, and I have seen their wonderful agriculture research infrastructure. They are one of the best in the world, or maybe the best in the world. This integration with your initiative of UC Davis, it will give an opportunity not only to that university, but I am sure to the research fraternity, to many scholars, that they can come together and do it. This is on this level. But I wish that on this level, on ground level also, we should do something. At Shobhit University, we initiate and we encourage to have some micro certifications, very small duration certifications, where idea is first to create a curiosity and to make people aware of what is possible, what is happening in the world. I do not know exactly that if it is in the scope of your organization or not, but in Linux Foundation, a lot of such initiatives must be there at different fronts. But if we can have with the AgStack Foundation something of that nature, where we can have a small certification, a micro certification, maybe a few hours, it is not necessary, and we say that okay, anybody from the country or from the world, they can join this online certification. They can learn more what is the possibility, what AgStack is doing, what agriculture should do, what is data, what is supply chain, and how it is important. That food should not be tasty only, food should look good also, as you mentioned. So these all possibilities we are looking forward to explore with you. And definitely after your deliberation, your presentation of both of you, an interest must be there in many of the stakeholders. So we are looking forward to work more closely with you, whatever way it is possible. Like being a university, I do not limit myself or the university. I always say that Shobhit is one such university where there is a red carpet for every new idea, every craziest idea, not a red tape, which is very important, I believe, in a country or anywhere it is. So whatever is smallest thing we can do together, we are looking forward for that. We are keen to do that. And thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Professor Moni, for having such wonderful session today with two wonderful eminent speakers. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chancellor. And I would like to request both Dr. Kapil Mehan and Mr. Smith Sobel to respond some of the points which the Honorable Chancellor has brought out. First to Mr. Dr. Kapil Mehan. You are, please unmute. Please unmute.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vijendra ji, for your very kind and encouraging words. No wonders you are third generation in academia, and as they say that education is the biggest reform that can bring about in anyone's life. And all of us who come from rural areas, rural backgrounds, from villages, are testimony to that statement that if any nation has to develop, you you know don't give them anything, but you just educate them, and they will do the rest. And societies, countries get that upliftment. I think that contribution is something that cannot be undermined in any way. And we are very happy that Dr. Moni brought us together to associate and to use your platform to talk about AgStack. A lot of hurdles, in projects like this, which have universal appeal, which have universal relevance. But still, when it comes to doing something, uh, we there are always a lot of hits and misses and lots of hurdles. But I'm sure, with people like you and as more and more people come to know about AgStack, more and more people come to know about the Agri ecosystem platform under creation, which Sumer and Linux Foundation are trying to do. I think our agriculture system will also benefit immensely from that. We just need to take some right steps, and not allow it to become one of more, uh, you know, one of more reports. Our DFI initiative has produced, I think, tons of reports. Perhaps, if an AgStack kind of a ecosystem uh, would have been designed by now, we would have started measuring the progress of that efforts. We would have, because how do we know that in from 2017 till now, in 3.5 years, how much progress has this DFI project made? So many millions of hours of very quality scaled time of experts has been used, and I'm sure there are outcomes. I'm sure there are improvements. I'm sure that there is some sections of society which, in an agri ecosystem, would have definitely benefited. But how much, how many, the good word can be spread around, how every farmer can have access to similar level of technology, similar level of competencies. I think that's what AgStack is envisioning to do, and we are very confident that this will happen, whatever be the hurdles, because there is no other solution. This will keep improving, of course, as the digital technology is encompassing every walk of life, and it is for good reason. That the whole, the world, if it has to become a better place, it has to consume less, it has to produce more, it has to produce quality, and that also in a sustainable way, not in any other way. So I think we are on the right track. I think our collective efforts will definitely yield fruit, and we will continue to make this effort, and have our AgStack up and running and supporting Agri digital revolution. Thank you very much. Thanks for providing this platform.
Yeah, thank you, Kapil, for those kind words, and thank you, Vijendra ji, for your very nice comments, kind comments, and I enjoyed your talk, your few comments very much. And thank you, Professor Moni, once again for giving us this platform to talk. I just want to make a couple of comments regarding some of the topics that Vijendra ji brought up in his comments. So the first topic, he mentioned, perhaps we could do some digital certification or something like that. And I think that I would say that's one of the areas that I'm very excited about. And not just digital certification, that's just one thing in the broad spectrum of collaboration. So I think, you mentioned storytelling. One of the stories that I like to tell is when I first came to the US, when I was a teenager, my hair was still black at the time. Now it's getting a little white. But, one of the things that really impressed me about American culture, I'm a very proud son of India, son of Punjab. I'm very, very proud of my heritage. And I'm very, I'll always be a son of Punjab and son of India. But one of the things that was very impressive to me when I came to the US was how collaborative everybody was. When I joined MIT as a freshman, and I was there for 9 years, the biggest thing that impressed me was not the caliber of professors or the the details of the theory that we were learning. I had a lot of friends in IITs, and they were just as good. In many ways, theoretical studies are even better there. What I was impressed by, and I think it's a fundamental opportunity that we must grab, is this notion of collaboration. Where when I had come from India, and to some degree, Indian culture is still that way, we are very prone to thinking in a zero-sum game. We think that, there's only so much opportunity in the world. And if I get this much, if somebody gets this much, then I don't get that. And so there is this notion of a zero-sum world. Whereas, and it's all in your mind, it's not, we are all living in the same world. But whereas, the mindset in the US generally, and particularly at MIT, was one of collaboration, where, what was more important than being the smartest kid, because everybody's smart there, was, can we collaborate with each other in a meaningful way? And like Kapil said, to actually create something, do something, not just talk about it. So what I would say is that there is an incredible opportunity in India today, broadly speaking, in the world in general, but particularly in India, because India is very uniquely a leader in agriculture, not just but the quantum of agriculture it creates, which is in the top 3, but the number of people that are engaged in agriculture is more than any other country in the world. And that presents a very unique opportunity, and the mindset is lined up. So what we really need to do is to take bold steps to engage with the largest stakeholders in India, with Shobhit, with Linux Foundation. We need to engage with the power and capital in India and seize this opportunity for collaboration. And certification is one idea. It's a great idea. We should do it. But there are 1,000 other ideas that we can also talk about. Of course, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So one step at a time. But the fundamental point I want to make is that AgStack is not a US project. AgStack is not an India project. AgStack is a global project. But India is very important for AgStack because it has this unique opportunity in time where the country's mindset is shifting, where digital is becoming the norm. And people in the villages don't want to go to the city. They don't actually want to go. Village life is fantastic, right? But people have to go. They feel they have to go because they see all these creature comforts in the cities. They see, I get married if I go to the city. Nobody's going to marry me if I'm in the village. I'll get all these things in the city. If those those comforts can come with digital technology in the villages, the village transformation in India will be a role model for the whole world to see. And I think that is not just possible. It must be done. It must be done, and it can be done. But it requires us all of us, to step out of our comfort zone and to collaborate with each other, despite any instinctual desire to hold on to our little piece. Because we are all kind of tenants of this world, right? We are all going to move on. But what will prevail is what kind of world we build together, right? So I feel India has a tremendous opportunity with the current government to engage with the stakeholders. We need partners in India who are going to not just talk the talk, or sign MOUs. Those are all great first steps. But let's go and do things together and build not just skilling, but actually employment and livelihoods around agri-informatics. Agri-informatics, when livelihoods start getting made, that's when those stories will start happening that you were referring to, right? I have friends in Delhi who keep 10 years ago they used to say, "Okay, yaar, you some so and so did an IPO in Silicon Valley," and now they say, "Well, so and so did an IPO in Gurgaon," right? So when the story comes home, there are plenty of undergraduate students that I know in India that I am a mentor to, that are willing to take not the corporate path but the entrepreneurship path. They're willing to invest their time because they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. They know that they'll be able to get married, they'll be able to have children and family, they'll be able to settle down. It's not going to be all futile. The law of large numbers has become part of the Indian vernacular. I believe the opportunity is there today to do the same thing with agri informatics. But we have to go outside of the university. They use the university, use Linux Foundation's brand and our global reach to engage with the Indian government. And I look forward to guidance and collaboration with you and Professor Moni. And Mr. Kapil Mehan is in India. He's like my brother. We are brothers from a different mother in some ways. He has a very different and very complementary way of looking at things. I deeply respect his passion, his background, and between the two of us, we'd love to chart a course, create the navigational map. So we say, look, this is how we're going to actually do things, so that we can take the stock, and hopefully 10 years later, when people were when they listen to the stock, they will then point to something and say, look, these guys actually went and did something. They didn't just talk. So thank you again for giving us the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just I would like to quickly say that we are in to be out of our comfortable zone. Yeah,
so
let us
thank you very much, Mr. Johal and Honorable Chancellor, and also Dr. Kapil Mohan. 10 years from now, I will be 78. Mr. Johal.
Professor Moni, 78. People from India running marathons at 104. 78, you're just a young child.
Thank you very much. And today is out of the it's a webinar series is one of the very wonderful and very purposeful webinar with international agenda for national development. And for the benefits of the participants, let me summarize today's talk for the benefit of all the stakeholders, especially for the youths from the rural area who are involved in agriculture rural development. AgStack is a project of Linux Foundation, which has 30-year track record in successfully standing up over 400 open source community projects across a variety of industries such as IT, healthcare, media, automotive, and defense. And AgStack is an umbrella project for the food and agricultural ecosystem. It consists of 4 main components: an open repository to create and publish models, free and easy access to public data, and interoperable frameworks for cross-project use, and topic-specific extensions and toolboxes that provide ontologies, natural language translation, and image libraries for machine learning and artificial intelligence. And wherever possible, AgStack will welcome and invite existing open source projects, agriculture standards to dock within AgStack to expand the ecosystem and enable and democratize a one-stop, free and global access. And agriculture informatics program of the Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, Meerut, and Shobhit University, Gango, and the Linux Foundation, and the 4 centers of excellence of the Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology will be a major force in India to drive. And as envisioned by the Honorable Chancellor, that if both 4 centers of excellence of this university and Linux Foundation were also in a position to promote agricultural informatics discipline in various programs, starting from micro certification and also up to the MTech level in agricultural informatics, it will bring not only the changes and benefits in the rural, India, that is Bharat, but in nations like Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia and South Asia, and up to Asia Pacific. And with this, I thank the Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Kapil Mehan, and Mr. Sumit Sogal for participating in this national webinar series and doubling farmers' income by 2022. AgStack, open source digital infrastructure for the agriculture ecosystem, a Linux Foundation project. Thank you very much. With this, we will close the webinar and leave the studio. Thank you. Thanks for your participation. And for more research inquiries, please contact Professor Moni Manaswamy, Professor Emeritus and Chairman of the Centers of Excellence in Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Studies and Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, and former Director General, National Informatics Center, Government of India, New Delhi. And my email ID is moni@shobhituniversity.ac.in. Have a nice day. We'll close the webinar and leave the studio.